Move up there from Carmel?
No, we still have a place in Carmel.
Okay, so you're part-time.
Part-time, yeah, part-time.
I know, I drove you home one day, so I knew you were in Carmel. But,
We're still there, but with this COVID, it's very difficult to I don't know, feel like you're in any place. It's just so isolated.
It is.
Yeah. And is your house pretty well now finished, the work you did on your...
Done.
Yes, good.
I'm really just enjoying it now. So
very good. Good. Oh, I see Don Goodhue there. Hello, Don. This is Catherine Gualtieri. You've got your mute button on your speaker. I don't know if he can hear us.
Yeah, he's talking, but
I think he's going to have to get his speaker on.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Larry unmuted me.
There you are, Don. How are you?
Hi.
Good.
Nice to see you.
Good. Very good to see you too. Do you know Carol Hall? She's there she is. She's on our board.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And how is
learning
everything?
All these new people.
Right. How are you and Esther holding up?
Just fine, just bored to death.
That's what we're doing. Carol and I were saying the same thing. We're bored, isolated, miserable.
But it won't be long now. They're saying, June 15th, everything should open up completely if we keep doing well.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope we do too.
Yeah.
So, I hear somebody in the background there.
Yes, it's 401.
Yeah.
There's Evan. Okay. I thought we were going to Zoom, but Marnie said they're trying. So.
Yeah, next meeting, I think.
Okay. Oh, there's Eric.
Hello, Eric. Hello. You have your sound on?
No, he doesn't. It's off.
There he is.
Hey there.
Hi.
There you are.
Did you see Don Goodhue, your old pal?
Yeah, hey, Don.
Hi, Eric.
Good to see you.
See you too. Let's see, do we have...
Well, we have the three of us, so we do have a quorum.
I think Brandon said that Thomas would be at this meeting. It will be his last meeting, though. So
this will be it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't see him. So.
I don't see him yet. Well, we have time, I guess, although I decided I better be the first one here since I was so late last time.
Oh, well, that makes up for it, Catherine.
Exactly. I bet you didn't know where I was. I didn't either. That was when the clocks changed and my computer never changed. And so I was an hour
That's right.
late.
That's right.
Oh.
That's what happened to me. So
It's supposed to change automatically, I thought.
I thought so too, but mine didn't.
Oh.
It had a mind of its own.
All right. Well, I was telling Eric, my computer is going, so I'm going to have to probably replace it. But
well, you're doing okay today, at least.
You're doing great.
You couldn't get a lot of the packet, though. You said, right?
That's right. I couldn't get the packet.
Oh no! Well,
or the minutes. Yeah, I couldn't read the minutes, and I couldn't get the packet. But other than that.
Well, board members, I just want to let you know this is Brandon. We are going to reach out to Thomas and just double check. He had let me know via email last week, I believe, that he would be joining us, but we're going to reach out to him just directly real quick to make sure that's going to happen. If he's not going to, then we can proceed since we do have a quorum. Just like Marnie said, there's no answer on his phone. So I guess at this point, I would suggest, it's up to the board, but I would suggest moving ahead since you do have a quorum. And then if Mr. Hood's able to join us, then we can bring him on at that point.
Okay. So I guess as vice chair, I can do the honors. Let's see. Sorry, I want to just get the...
Your old hat at this, Eric.
See if I remember. Okay, so I'll go ahead and call to order the Historic Resources Board meeting for Monday, April 19th to order. Roll call, please.
Yes. Board Member Gualtieri,
Here?
Board Member Hall,
Here?
Board Member Croman, Board Member Dyer,
Here.
Board Member Hood. Thank you.
Okay. So now it's time to have anybody who wishes to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda can do so. We'll wait a moment to see if there's anybody. I don't know how many people are actually on the 15 people, I guess.
Chair Dyer, while we're waiting for that, I've got a request from the IT folks that are running the meeting. Could you get a little bit closer to your microphone or speak up? They're having a hard time picking up your audio.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Hearing no one addressing the board, we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements for the board or from board members? And uh-oh. Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda, which is the minutes from the March 10th, 2021 meeting.
I move the minutes for the March 10 meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the minutes from the March 10th meeting. Is there a second?
I was unable to read the minutes.
Oh, well, Eric, you better.
I will make the second. And okay, then we'll have a question. And there's just two people at the meeting then that I guess we don't have a quorum to adopt the minutes since Kara was not able to read them. Should we continue those to the following meeting?
I move to continue to the May meeting, the minutes of the March 10th.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll continue those and adopt them at the next meeting. And now on to orders of business. The first one is DS 2339, located at Casanova Street 4 southeast of 9th. Consideration of a determination of consistency with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties for a design study for a 170 square foot addition, 200 square foot detached garage, and alterations to an historic residence, the Artie Bowen House. Staff report, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. Can everyone see the PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and everyone can hear me okay as well?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. So before you this afternoon is a request for a determination of consistency with the Secretary's standards. So the project site is the historic Artie Bowen House. This is a 1906 bungalow that is currently on the local historic inventory. It's located on Casanova Street 4 southeast of 9th. It's a 1,144 square foot residence with an attached garage that's been converted to a laundry and storage area. Some of the alterations that have occurred over the years include a porch addition to the front in 1924, which has also achieved historic integrity in its own right. The garage addition was done in 1935, and there's a number of additions to the rear of the house done in the 70s and 80s. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 177 square foot addition at the rear of the home. It's a single story. and then also construct a 210 square foot detached garage in front of the existing garage, essentially in the driveway. All of the windows are also proposed to be replaced, except for one on the front elevation. And then there's associated site improvements. So the Secretary standards require that all character-defining features of a historic residence be preserved. So the character-defining features of the Artie Bowen house include the shed roof, as well as the original 1906 shingles. The front porch, although it was a later addition, again, has achieved historic status in its own right. And has become a character-defining feature of this bungalow. And this front window is actually an original window with the original glass. And this is the window that will be preserved and remain completely intact. The other window on the front elevation, while not original, is the original opening. And so that the size of that opening is proposed to be retained as a character-defining feature. Lastly, the garage addition roofline will be modified. The plate height will be raised to make the interior more functional as living space. On the north elevation, you can see the distinction where the 1906 cottage ends is where the shingles end. This window on the north elevation is also not the original window, but is the original opening. And again, that opening is proposed to be preserved and will remain intact. Oh, and there's the windows. So a phase 2 historic evaluation is required. The city consulted with Margaret Clovis on this phase 2 evaluation. She did evaluate the project for consistency with the Secretary's standards and ensure that all the character-defining features will be protected and preserved. Her report concludes that the project is consistent with the standards, and staff's recommendation is that the board adopt a resolution issuing the determination. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's see, any questions of Marnie, please, from the board? I guess I have a question, Marnie. Is there a elevation of the front detached garage? Or a street elevation? I was looking through the drawing files. I didn't see it.
Yes, there is. Oh, my apologies. We have the side elevations, but you're correct. It's not shown on the front there. My apologies.
Okay. Can I ask, I just wanted to be clear about the materials. I guess it's almost a reconstructed place where the garage was, which now looks like it has vertical siding. What is that material exactly? Or maybe that's a question for Adam, but.
Yes, we should check with the architect.
Okay. And then just to be clear on what was submitted, they wanted to replace the windows on the front elevation that in the recommendations or the conditions of approval, suggested conditions of approval would remain as existing or repaired. Is that correct on the west elevation?
I'm sorry, for the shingles?
No, I'm sorry, for the windows.
For the windows.
In the elevation, it appears those windows that were existing look like they're new, but the conditions of approval was to keep them?
Correct. There's one window that will be 100% preserved. So this will not change. All other windows will be replaced in the house, including this window. But the dimensions of the opening will be protected.
Okay, and do we know when that, you're saying the opening was there, but the window that's now there in its place is not original. Do we know when that was installed? Or have an idea?
I do not.
Okay.
Is the look of the window going to remain the same with the same panes?
No, the existing window is not stylistically appropriate to the bungalow. And so it will be replaced with a casement window.
Okay. Is the garage siding board and batten?
It appears so. No, as Adam, we should certainly ask the architect to clarify on that.
Okay. Any other questions of Marnie? Hearing none, I will go ahead and open it up to the public hearing and have the applicant or applicant's representative. Adam, do you want to discuss the project?
Hello, Chair Dyer and members of the board. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to go by the site this afternoon. So this was a project that was previously reviewed and approved by the board a number of years ago. It's now under new ownership. But the scope of the project is very consistent with the project that was previously approved, probably the most significant change being the proposed addition of the detached garage in the front. As you can see in the side elevations that are shown now, that garage will be lowered almost to the level of the street, which will allow it to sort of maintain, will defer to the main house in terms of the overall architecture and visibility from the street. So there will be, depending on your perspective, there may be a little bit of an obstructed view of the existing porch, but the idea is to have that structure be as low and as deferential as possible. As Marnie mentioned in her report, we are planning to follow all the recommendations of the consultant, including maintaining those existing openings in the historic fabric, maintaining the one original window that's next to the front door and the existing roof form. So the house, essentially maintains all of those character defining elements. In terms of the siding, we basically have three types of siding. So we have the original wood shingles that are to be maintained. We have new horizontal siding for the addition at the rear of the residence, which will distinguish it from the original house. And then we do have some vertical siding on the garage and the front portion of the old original shed garage. So those are the types of materials that have been proposed. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about the project.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Any questions of Adam?
Is the angle of the roof on the garage the same as on the house behind it?
That's correct, yes. So there's a question about the front elevation of the garage. The gable facing the street will match the roof slope of the gable on the front porch of the house.
Great, thank you.
And is the front door completely new, or is that also being maintained?
Yes, it will be a completely new door. As shown, it has a half-light glass window on the top of the door. But yes, it'll be a new door. I don't believe the door that's there is original, and it's in pretty sad shape.
Okay. Let's see. And then the vertical siding, Adam, is that just a T and G, or is it I'm just trying to understand how that actually looks. Is it just a flat vertical T&G siding?
Yes.
Okay.
Not board and batten?
No board and batten.
Okay. Any other questions about them? Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the board on this application may do so now. Wait a moment. Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion. Who would like to start?
I think I'd like to hear from Carol first, and I do support the project. This is a historic cottage that needed work, and I'm glad that the applicants have done what is necessary. But I'd like to hear if Carol has any other questions. And I don't have the second page of the staff report. I don't know why I didn't copy it, so I'm not going to be able to make a motion. So hopefully Carol will, or
Okay.
Eric.
Well, I approve of what the project is doing. I probably would prefer board and batten on the garage, just to match the area behind it, so that there aren't three different finishes on the building. But I don't feel strongly about that. And just with that note, I would certainly move to approve it.
Okay. Catherine, do you have any?
No, I support what Carol said.
Okay. Okay. I think the project works. I think the detached garage in the location it's placed, which is basically in front of the non-historic section of the house and is farther back, closer to the house, I think, which will allow more view of the historic section is a good strategy. So I'm in support of the project as well, and will entertain a motion of approval.
I will move to approve DS 20-339, the Artie Bowen House on Casanova 4 Southeast of 9th. Is there anything more I need to add to that?
I think we're basically adopting a resolution of consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards is the actual motion. So
Yes.
Second.
Okay, is that clear, Margie? What we're basically, I think the motion includes all the conditions of approval in the staff report, correct,
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Okay, and that's approved by the seconder, Catherine?
Correct.
Okay, and I will have roll call vote. Margie?
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Gualtieri,
Yes.
Chair Dyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is consideration of a determination of consistency for a design review application DR 20395 for demolition of the Palo Alto Savings and Loan Community Room, Block 91, Lot 6, and construction of a 16,898 square foot mixed use development with 11,371 square foot basement garage in the service commercial zoning district. And that's at Dolores 2 Southeast of 7th. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So the project is located on Dolores 2 Southeast of 7th on a 12,000 square foot site comprised of 3 lots of record, lots 6, 8, and 10. The applicant is proposing to demolish all improvements across the 3 lots and construct a 16,898 square foot 2-story mixed-use development with an 11,371 square foot basement garage. 2/3 of the project site, lots 6 and 8, are located on part of the Palo Alto Savings and Loan Bank complex, which currently occupies lots 2, 4, 6, and 8 of Block 91. The purpose of this review is limited to reviewing the proposed demolition of the community room against the Secretary of Interior standards and consideration of a determination of consistency for the proposed demolition. The Palo Alto Savings and Loan Bank complex, consisting of a bank building and a detached community room building, was constructed in 1972 and constructed by Walter Birdie and William Shaw. While the Palo Alto Savings and Loan buildings are characteristic of the Second Bay region tradition of architecture and designed by noted architects, in 2019, a determination of ineligibility was issued for the property with that determination set to expire on October 26, 2020. I'm sorry, 2022. The subject site has also been determined to be ineligible for the National Register of Historic Places. While the site is ineligible for both the local inventory and the National Register, the site is eligible for listing on the California Register of Historic Resources under Criteria 3, the architecture. And in accordance with CEQA, a structure must be treated as a historic resource if it is listed in or determined to be eligible for listing in the California Register of Historic Resources. While the complex is eligible for listing on the California Register, an addendum to the evaluation of historical significance for the complex was prepared by Margaret Clovis, one of the city's historic preservation consultants, evaluating the significance of the community room as an individual resource. That evaluation concluded that the Palo Alto Savings and Loan Complex consists of 2 buildings, a bank building and a community room. By definition, they are a historically related unit, and as a unit, they have been determined eligible for the California Register of Historic Resources. The primary building within the complex is the bank, and the property's historical significance is predicated on that bank. The community room is an ancillary structure that does not contribute to the overall significance of the complex. And in addition, if the community room were to be evaluated for its eligibility on the California Register on its merits alone, the community room would not meet the criteria for listing as an individual resource. So as part of the review for the project, a phase 2 report was prepared by Ms. Clovis evaluating the project's consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards for the proposed demolition of the community room. The phase 2 report concludes that the demolition of the community room will not have a significant impact on the historic bank building, provided that the project meets the applicable Secretary standards, and that the recommended conditions identified in the report are followed. In accordance with CMC 1732-160B1, the board may, 1, if they agree with the conclusion, issue a determination of consistency and adopt any appropriate conditions of approval. Or 2, if they disagree, there's 2 options. Request additional information prior to issuance of a determination of consistency. Or 3, may issue a finding of noncompliance with the Secretary's standards. And any findings of noncompliance by the board shall be supported by substantial evidence. The report found that standards number 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10 are applicable to the project, with 3, 4, and 7 not being applicable. The evaluation concluded that the demolition is consistent with the applicable standards, again, on the condition that the recommendations in the report are carried out. So in regard to standard 1, the recommendation outlined in the phase 2 evaluation states that the existing spatial relationship between buildings should be maintained. The report recommends using the northern wall of the community room as a setback line, and the walkway width between buildings should be maintained. In a separate meeting with the applicant and Ms. Clovis, it was discussed that there is some flexibility regarding the setback, and staff is recommending that the proposed structure be permitted to extend 1 foot beyond the existing northern wall of the community room, with an additional allowance for the staircase, for a staircase at the rear of the site. And this recommendation has been included as recommended condition of approval number 1. In regard to standard number 2, the The historic character of the bank building is not proposed to be altered. There's no distinctive materials proposed to be removed, and the features and spaces will not be altered. And it also recommends that any new development be placed away at the side of the historic beam. In the service commercial district where the proposed structure is proposed to be located, there is a required build to line. So along Dolores Street, the structure is required to be constructed within 2.5 feet of the front property line. And then as viewed from 7th Avenue, the building would be set back over 80 feet from the 7th Avenue sidewalk. In regard to standard number 5, it's recommended that a protection plan be submitted for HRB review and approval prior to the commencement of any work on the project site. The applicant has submitted a protection plan, both a written description as well as protection measures outlined in the plan. Recommended condition of approval number 2 has been included, which states that the protection plan must be followed and any changes to the protection plan must be approved by the HRB. In regard to standard number 6, construction plans need to indicate how the wall will be repaired of the bank building. There is a walkway, an elevated walkway that connects the community room to the existing bank building. And there will be repairs needed to be completed to the bank building. So we have included recommended condition of approval number 3, which states that a application for the repairs to the bank building be submitted prior to any issuance of a building or demo permit. Standard number 8 requires an archaeological reconnaissance report. A archaeological report has been prepared for all 3 sites. The reports found that there are no evidence of cultural resources on the site. However, we have included a recommended condition of approval number 4 and 5, which relate to the event that archaeological resources are found at the site and what to do should that occur. And then standard 9 and 10. For standard 9, the proposed work is consistent with standard 9. And then in regard to standard 10, it is also concluded that it's consistent with standard 10, provided that the preservation guidance outlined in technical note number, I believe that should say 35, I apologize, and the protection plan outlined under standard number 5 are adhered to. So staff's recommendation is to adopt a resolution issuing a determination of consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards for the demolition of the Palo Alto Savings and Loan Bank community room. Again, there are 2 alternatives. One is to request additional information prior to the issuance of the determination of consistency, or 2, you issue a finding of noncompliance with the Secretary's standards. And if you choose to do that, any findings of noncompliance shall be supported by substantial evidence. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Evan from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have
Yes,
a question.
Catherine. Go ahead.
Evan, in our packet, we have a copy of the notice of ineligibility that staff prepared following the City Council's decision not to include the bank complex in the historic inventory. I think it was a year ago, last February. There are 5 boxes on the form, and the one that is checked on the 4th box explains one of the reasons why the City Council made that determination. It says that the bank complex had no association with important architecture. And since the bank's architects are both listed as prominent in the historic context statement, why do you think this box was checked?
I actually had the same question. And it's my understanding that just because someone is listed in the historic context statement does not make their work necessarily eligible for listing.
Oh, okay. That's your That's your opinion?
That's not my opinion. That's my understanding as to why that box was checked. The city council determined at the time that just because they are listed in the historic context statement, that would not rise to the inclusion of listing. Perhaps during the public comment, I can try to get a better answer for you.
Okay. I have a second question.
Sure.
The fifth box on the notice of ineligibility states that there are better examples of the architect's work, and that box was not checked. So does that mean there aren't any better examples of Bertie and Shaw's work in the city of Carmel?
I want to make sure I understand the question correctly. You're asking, because that box was not checked, that means there are better examples?
Well, that's my understanding. Are there? If you don't check that box, does this mean that there are better examples of commercial architecture done by Bertie and Shaw?
That would be my understanding. If someone presented that document to me and that box was not checked, that would be my interpretation.
Okay. And my third and last question is, in your opinion as staff, does an ancillary building contribute to the significance of a historic structure?
In this instance, no. Staff's in agreement with the conclusions made by Ms. Clovis.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can maybe clarify, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the HRB last year voted to place the complex on the inventory because using, I think the code section is 1732-040H, which basically allows buildings under 50 years old to be placed on the inventory if they're of exceptional quality. The HRB felt that was the case in this building, and the council did not feel that it had the exceptional quality to qualify for that lower than 50-year threshold. Is that your understanding, Evan? Or staff's understanding?
Yes, that is. Yes, so in 2019, the project came before the HRB for a separate, unrelated project. The previous determination of ineligibility had expired. And at that hearing, the project was broken into two components, one reviewing whether or not a determination of ineligibility should be issued, and then another one for adopting a determination of consistency for the Secretary of Interior's standards. The outcome of that hearing was the board voted to list the resource and not adopt a determination of ineligibility. And then the second part of the project was continued, no decision made. Ultimately, the HRB's decision to list the property was appealed to City Council, and City Council overturned the HRB's decision.
And the crux of that City Council decision was simply the exceptional. They weren't necessarily saying it wasn't significant if it was 50 years or older, but because it was 48 years old or whatever it was at that point, they just didn't feel it reached the exceptional threshold that the code requires.
Correct. That's my understanding. And not necessarily the kicker, but just another component of this is typically every time we issue a determination of ineligibility, those expire every 5 years. But because this property will turn 50 prior to the 5 years expiring, the determination of ineligibility will expire in October 2022, which is less than 5 years from the date it was issued.
Okay. Any other questions of Evan? Okay, thank you, Evan. So with that, I will open the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative, Mr. Ciliano?
Yes, good afternoon, planning staff, Chair Dyer, and HRB members. Jun Ciliano, architect for the proposed JB store building. Listening to all the comments and discussion points, first of all, at the site visit today, we do concur with staff's recommendation of 1 foot further south for building setback to the historic building. And secondly, we do concur with the approval conditions, the recommended approval conditions. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. I have with me the project development team, so we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of the architect?
I know that you had a community meeting to discuss the design of the new building. Have there been any changes to that design since the community meeting?
Yes, major changes actually. Since the community meeting, when we first presented the project, there was no setback to the historic building. So we designed it to accommodate the wider opening for the side setback. And since then, there are other changes, but not impacting HRB. The major impact to HRB would be the setback from the historic building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess I have one question. You're probably aware of the last project for the site you're designing for that came before us was their design actually kept the community room and created an adaptive use for it and recommended reconstruction, which was one option. And I'm just wondering whether that was ever considered in the design process.
No, I'm not even aware that there was an application. I know there was an application, but I was not aware of the details of that previous application. In fact, when we were talking to the city before the current owners purchased the property, the first thing we want to determine, or the first thing we determined, is the significance of the community building. So the Meg Clovis prepared the phase 1 report. Based on that phase 1 report saying that it's not historic, that the community building is not historic, we created our design based on that information that we're going to demolish the community building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of June? Okay, hearing none, I will, is anyone else wishing to address the board on this application? Okay, I wasn't sure whether Mr. Goodhue wanted to speak or not, but he's the only other one I see on the line here. Okay, so hearing nobody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think I have quite a few things to say based on the fact that we've had so many reports and evaluations come to us since Friday, and both from the consultant in the past and also from the staff. And so I would like, if you will indulge me, to start with the October 3rd, 2019 report. And that was prepared for a demolition project that was later withdrawn, as we all know. That report included testimony from respected architects in the Monterey Peninsula area who publicly stated that the former Palo Alto Savings and Loan Bank complex was an exceptional example of its style, and it retained a high level of integrity, and it was the work of master architects and embodied the distinctive characteristics of its type and period. So that, I think, explains why the board listened to those professional opinions. And they also proved to me that sufficient time had elapsed since the building of the bank that would allow a scholarly perspective on why it was significant and what place it had in Carmel's history. So that was the October 2019 report that we acted upon. Now comes the June 2020 evaluation by the consultant, that gives a specific reason for the original purpose behind the construction of the bank's community room. And it actually dated, according to the information we received, to the bank's president's mandate that staff in every city that had a local branch of the Palo Alto Savings and Loan, or Northern California as it was also called, would become involved in local improvement projects and provide meeting space for the community as part of the bank's public relations strategy. And Bertie and Shaw, the project architects, were tasked to design a small building that would be separated from the bank that would be used for this express purpose. And I disagree with the consultant's view that the community room was, in her words, simply a postscript to the architect's intentions. I think there is proof based on the Pinecone report that it was requested by the client, the bank, to help forge good community relations. And equally important, the community room's design actually mirrors the bank building's important character-defining features: the shed roof with copper, the vertical heart redwood siding, the large plate glass windows, and the walkway connecting it to the main structure. So that's October and June. Now I'm going to March 1, 2021, which is very close to where we are. And this is the new demolition proposal, I assume by the new owners. And they have evaluated, or the consultant has, the community room alone on its individual merits. And this approach to studying a historic resource is absolutely foreign to me. I don't think it conforms to historic preservation principles. The consultant's view that the architect's energies only focused on the main bank building and nothing else is very questionable. I think she'd have to be a mind reader to assume that. The community room is not required to be significant in its own right, as she says. There are no preservation rules that state that it has to stand on its individual merit in order to qualify for historic status. The community room is a vital part of the original bank design. And while it is subordinate to the bank building, it has a spatial relationship to it. The staff report prepared on April 19th of this year amplifies the consultant's opinion on assessing an ancillary building, which is why I asked the question earlier, on its individual merit by introducing an example, a fictional example of a historic home that has a detached garage. And while a garage is considered a related feature of a main building, it is also part of an architect's design, and it's a component for the overall planning for the site. I have a real example where an accessory building wasn't considered disposable as the community room is. Some years ago, this very board received a homeowner's request to demolish a structure that was designed by renowned master builder Hugh Comstock. The owner of the birthday house at the southwest corner of 6th and Santa Rita wished to demolish her dilapidated detached garage. And the board at that time was very, very vocal in expressing its concerns about destroying part of Comstock's original design, and they voted to repair and renovate the garage rather than demolish it. I think that proves that this functioning to this day is with the Comstock house, so too the bank building and the community room are a historically related unit. Though the room is subordinate, it has physical integrity and is a component of the original design as ordered by the clients who built the bank. So the above reports all state that the bank is eligible for listing on the California Register. And our board has already voted once that the complex is the work of two master architects, Walter Bertie and Will Shaw, who had an office here in Carmel, whose names are listed in the context statement, and whose works include the Christian Science Church in Carmel, the original Monterey Airport Terminal and Tower, the Custom House renovation in Monterey, and the Highlands Inn reconstruction. Will Shaw collaborated with Ansel Adams to create the Foundation for Environmental Design, a group that supported projects that would blend into the environment. Unfortunately, when the City Council considered the board's decision to add the bank complex to the city's historic inventory, I think the argument focused on the fact that the bank wasn't yet 50 years old, despite the fact that several professional consultants had provided the evidence that the complex is already of exceptional significance. So a project with new construction on the site of a demolished community room, in my mind, constitutes an adverse effect on the bank complex and destroys the original concept designed by two respected master architects. I think there's sufficient substantial evidence that would allow the board to make this finding of non-compliance. And after all, Carmel is a certified local government. We have a partnership with the state of California. We believe that this property is eligible for the California Register of Historic Resources. Why would we overlook historic preservation principles and standards while at the same time we try to apply for state grant funding to work on other preservation projects? It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm anxious to hear what the rest of the board thinks of this proposal to demolish a part of a building that has, over the years, developed more and more architectural significance.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Carol, do you have any comments?
Well, my hat is off to Catherine for her homework and her cogent report. I do not have the history with the board for back to 2019 when it was discussed before. I am looking to the people who are trying to build a building on that site and what saving the community room might do to their situation, their design. I don't know quite what to say at this point. I originally would have been for demolishing that ancillary building. Catherine makes a good argument. I probably would still side with concern over what's going there and what that needs and entails, but certainly gives me pause.
Yes, and just to be clear, we're not evaluating what's being proposed on the other site. Okay, I think it's been clear that this board has felt this building is of really high significance for many years. We've consistently made its statements about its significance. In fact, I would have to say, in terms of the decade of the 1970s, this is certainly the most significant commercial building built in Carmel in that decade. And I think that gives it, it creates this historic example demonstrating is an example demonstrating the historic development of the decade of the 70s. And that's why I think the board concluded, or one of the main reasons the board concluded, along with the exceptional nature of the two architects, that it was eligible for and the exceptional threshold to be placed on the inventory before it's 50 years old. It's clear that the community room was designed as part of the composition of the original building. And I agree with Catherine the way some of the things are stated in the historic evaluation by Meg Clovis, saying I think there was some very strange language about, I go back to the original. Excuse me. She makes a statement in here that says the community room was simply a postscript to their design intentions intentions tacked on primarily to satisfy the bank's commitment to forging community connections. Again, I agree with Catherine that I don't think there's a way to read the architect's minds, but it's clear that the building itself was integral to design. It's in the original drawings, and it is part of the whole composition. The details are the same. So I don't know how you can't say it's significant in the same way the main building is. It's part of the original composition. So I basically disagree. I think it's part of it is historically significant and should be maintained. I think there is an argument for reconstruction, which we had a conversation of when the last proposal came before us. But I think at this point, the decision is, we have to look at the motion for noncompliance or ask for more information. I guess, Catherine, do you have some idea of how you'd like to approach that?
Thank you, Eric. We have an idea from now the architect is Mr. Solano. You're the architect, I think. He mentions he never heard of the original proposal to reconstruct. So I have to take him at his word. I'm surprised, but given the information that we have now, I don't see how we could go ahead and issue a determination of consistency with the Secretary's standards when an integral part of the complex, which everyone agrees is eligible for the state register, is going to be torn down. There's no way I could support that. I guess our other option is to continue the hearing until the next meeting and allow the architect to look into what was said and done and realize that in a very short time, this building will be 50 years old, faster than we think. So to me, there's no rush here to tear something down when it's this close to being considered significant. To me, it already is.
And I think another problematic part of the historic evaluation was the discussion of the testimonials of professionals and experts, and they didn't mention the community room specifically. And I don't know if they were asked to do that or were brought to the attention that was a major issue. So if we were to continue it, I'd be interested to request updates to those testimonials from the experts to provide maybe more evidence that this is significant.
That sounds right. I see a hand up, I guess.
It's me.
Soliano,
I just want to.
Sorry, let me open the public hearing. Go ahead.
Well, Catherine rightfully said earlier on the first notice of, let me find that, hold on, that you were questioning why it was checked or it was not checked. I kind of agree with that. The comment from Meg Clovis, I think, is something to do with, your question earlier about other work done by Shaw and Birdie. Well, obviously, there are a lot of good examples of their work. I think Meg is just saying the community center building does not rise to that level because there are other good examples of these architects' work. And it so happened that the community center does not bring it to that level the same way that the bank building does. So that's hence she prepared this report. Obviously, I cannot read her mind, but analyzing what was said here and how she prepared the report and based on other projects we've dealt with, if there are, they're not just because it's an architect that's known in the area, it does not mean that each project they do becomes historically significant. Sure. I think that's where we're coming from.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I'll close the public hearing then. Just to respond to that, I think Catherine's point, I guess the board's position, it seems to me, consensus position, seems to be that the community room should not be analyzed as a separate building because it's integral to the composition of the whole complex.
I personally, Mr. Chair, I don't know how that happened because to me that's antithetical to evaluating a historic building. And as far as other structures being more important, it isn't like we have to just have one of each. And to me, this this particular building has been given a great scrutiny by the architectural community. Perhaps Ms. Clovis is a historian by trade, as I am, but every trade, every profession looks at things a little differently. Architects look at things differently. Historians look at things differently. Archaeologists have their own set of rules and standards. The key, though, is to listen to the architects on an architecturally significant structure. And I have not heard architects come forward and say this building isn't worth keeping. And part of the building is definitely the community room. So I'm not willing to say, let's just throw it out with the bathwater.
Okay. I might ask, Brandon, do you have any comments on how the board should approach it if we want to develop more evidence? Because we need substantial evidence to provide a motion for non-compliance. And I mean, I would, just before I let you speak, I mean, there is, again, the previous proposal created a very nice adaptive reuse for the community room that was integral to the design of the whole apartment complex, which I thought was acceptable. I think what we're arguing is that, unlike the report, is that we feel the community room, because it was designed intentionally as part of the complex that is eligible for California listing, we think, I mean, that alone, I think, would give it evidence that it is significant in itself because it's part of the same building. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds like, you know, from what I'm hearing from the board, the overall desire is to essentially deny the request, more or less, of making the determination of consistency. So the board has a couple of options. You could just make give staff language for a resolution to deny that, essentially, finding that the project that's in front of you, which is demolition of the community room, is not consistent. And so that would be the decision of the HRB. That decision would then either the applicant could take that decision, rework their plan, come back with a new plan, and have that reviewed by the HRB, or our code does allow for appeal to the city council, as you already know, because that's happened before in the past. So I would say those are probably your two main options. If you were going to do, I was trying to listen and take some notes on the idea of a continuance. The continuance would probably be your option if it sounded like the applicant was willing and interested in doing some modifications. I don't know if they are. You may want to ask them to speak to that. But if they're not, if their desire is not really to, change their design to keep this community room, then I don't know if a continuance serves the board well. I think that, it sounds like the information's been presented. The board, it sounds like, has arrived at somewhat of a consensus about the determination. But of course, it's at your discretion if you'd like to continue it. So those are sort of the three pathways that I've seen coming out of this so far.
Okay, so why don't I open the public hearing again and have Mr. Solano.
Yeah, I want to, if I can confer quickly with our development team.
Sure, of course.
You can give me a second.
Sure. I think in terms of the support, I think Catherine mentioned a lot of important aspects that should be mentioned if this moves forward to appeal.
We'll see what the architect says, but I could send my comments to the staff, and maybe that would help work with them if you need it.
That would certainly be one option, and another option that would be possible is if the board wanted to, if the board didn't feel comfortable with just sending comments to staff to include, and you really wanted to see a final version of your resolution for denial, you could give staff that feedback, send the comments, and then continue the item for staff to come back with that draft resolution for you to approve. the resolution of denial. If you felt really strongly about wanting to take a look at the final language, that's how we would do that, is bring it back for you at the next meeting for adoption, essentially.
I think that would be good. It would also mean that we have other people on the board who, like Jordan, who has not participated. He might be there. And we would give the architects, perhaps, who didn't say anything, they may want to speak at some point at a continued hearing.
So you certainly have options as a board of what you'd like to do. If you want to just, as I said, deny it today and give staff leave to take your words and put it together in a resolution and not see it again, or if you want to continue it, we would prepare the resolution for you and bring it back, and you could make little tweaks in it if you wanted to, and it would be approved in the next hearing. But that's what the next hearing would be about. It wouldn't be necessarily about the merits of the project. You would be considering a resolution for denial of determination.
I see.
Yeah, but people could
If
still
they
make
chose not
comments
to
as part of the public
modify the
hearing.
plans.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a way for the board to get a final look at the resolution. I've seen that done before in situations like this where board members really felt strongly and wanted to make sure their words were represented, knowing that it may go on appeal.
And I guess Evan, you might comment on this. I'm just, because I know Brandon wasn't here for the previous, what happened a year ago, but were the applicants made aware of the HRB's previous positions and how we viewed the building?
The applicants of this project?
Yes.
Yes, that's what initiated the addendum report, was to answer the questions regarding the merits of the community room on its own. So they knew that the HRB was, interested in protecting the complex. The question was asked, though, what about the community room on its own? And then that's what initiated that report.
Okay. Although if you listen to our minutes, I think from the previous meeting a year ago, keeping the community room was definitely discussed, and I think the consensus was that we thought it was integral to the complex at that point. So I feel it's, I'd be disappointed if they weren't aware of our position after we'd been so clear about it. Okay, Mr. Sile.
I conferred with the developer, the owners, and we would respectfully request that you deny our project.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, then?
Yes.
Would you be ready for a motion?
Sure.
I move a continuance of this project in order for the staff to prepare a resolution based on our comments, which I will send in mine, and come back at the next meeting with wording to state that this project does not meet the, is non-compliant with the Secretary's standards.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, I second it. So roll call, please.
Yes. Commissioner Hall?
Did you say Hall?
Yes.
Nay.
Commissioner Gualtieri?
Yes?
Commissioner Dyer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, can I just understand what happened? Does that mean to say we're not going to deny? This is more internal HRB discussion now at this point? Because we requested for denial, and
Mr. Chair, would you like me to explain?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
So what's going to happen now, Mr. Ciliano, is that staff will prepare. So like for this hearing, we came with a resolution. The HRB essentially said that's not the resolution they want to approve. And so we have continued the hearing to next month, where we will come back with a new resolution on this project, essentially saying what the commission said today, where they're not agreeing that it would be consistent. So the resolution will come back in 1 month to the HRB for vote, and they will vote at that point whether they want to adopt that resolution denying it. And that would be the point that you would have an opportunity to appeal that to the city council after that meeting. So we'll be back next month with a revised resolution, essentially saying the words of the HRB.
Okay, can I ask further question? Because my understanding is there's 5 members or 3 members of the board.
5 members.
So that you had possibly one vote to approve it. So that's the question. We have one member that's leaving the board. So I don't know what the number will be at the next meeting. Brandon.
Yeah, that's my question. Basically, is let's say you have 4, and in a month you go back to HRB and you get another vote. What happens if it's a tie vote or 3?
According to parliamentary procedure, a tie vote, a motion cannot pass under a tie vote. So a motion essentially fails. So whatever the motion is, if it's a tie vote at the time, that motion would fail, and a new motion would have to be made.
Which is potentially agreeing with the staff initial recommendation.
Just a different motion.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to be clear.
We are working to try to fill the vacant slot, so we will have 5 members for the May meeting. We are in the process, but it does take some time because there has to be interviews with city council members. So we are working on that. Hopefully we'll have 5 in May, but there is a way to proceed if there's a 4-person board.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the Certified Local Government Annual Report. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Dyer. Give me just 1 second to share my screen again. Oh, my apologies. All right, I'm sorry about this little pop-up box here. So staff has brought to the board the annual report that is required for all certified local governments. We often refer to that as CLG. This is the annual report from 2019-2020. So there's a number of different components to the report that we need to share with the State Office of Historic Preservation. And that includes any amendments that we made to our historic preservation ordinance during that period, how many properties we added or removed from the local inventory, how we're implementing our local policies and procedures as it relates to historic preservation. The state also asks us to report on our current board members and staff as far as terms, qualifications, attendance records at meetings, trainings held throughout the year with the board, other preservation activities that we might be undertaking, and any Mills Act contracts we may be reviewing or entering into. So that is what is contained in the report. In the attached, the report is attached to your staff report for your review. Staff is simply just asking that you receive the report, provide any feedback on the annual report. And once we receive that, we'll go ahead and finalize the report and send it off to the state. The report is due at the end of this month. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Marnie. Is there anything you specifically need from board members? Additionally, from what you have already? Because I know you sent out some requests. I don't know how many people responded to that.
I did get 3 of the 5. So I still do need a statement of qualifications or resume for 2 board members.
Okay, so whoever those people may be, please respond.
Whoever you are. Well, I thought it was a very good report, Marnie, and I like the way you provided some training for us in this COVID year. I thought it looked very, very presentable. So thank you for putting that report together.
Ditto.
Absolutely. And I guess the other thing I did want to ask the board, if you had completed any trainings on your own during this time period, if you could share that with me so that I can include that as well.
And so can you clarify at least one thing is, so we are applying, well, I guess I can talk about it in the next, let me go back to sorry, lost my agenda.
It's the certified grant application.
Yeah, the grant application, I guess we can move on to that. And my question was, is there any time thresholds we need to be concerned about in terms of applying for that? And are we able to now, I assume we are, because were we certified last year correctly so we can apply for that? Or is it going to fall under this year's certification?
It will fall under this year's.
Okay. Okay, do we want to talk about the grant application?
No, I think it's okay.
Sorry, before we move on, does the board have any feedback or any comments on the application that they would like to share with staff?
I think it's fine as it is.
I think it looks good.
Great. All right.
So yeah, the CLG grant application, it's exciting.
Yeah. So as a certified local government, one of the benefits is being able to apply for grants from the state. So the opportunity that's available right now is actually some federal funding through the National Park Service. This money is funneled through the state of California to be dispersed among the local jurisdictions. There is $187,000 available, and they are anticipating awards between $2,500 and $40,000. These amounts are subject to change because it all depends on how many jurisdictions actually submit a grant application. And so the grant will be for work performed starting October 1st of this year through September 30th of 2022. And some of the types of projects that could be included under the grant application include a general plan historic preservation element, making revisions to your local historic preservation ordinance, preparing historic context statements, and a whole variety of other preservation activities.
Great.
So our historic context statement, it was originally drafted back in 1994, adopted in 1997. Since that time, we've done one update, and that was accomplished in 2008. So our existing historic context statement is now 13 years old, and it ends at 1965. And as you see on the left-hand side of the screen, the context statement really is a critical component to our historic preservation program. It's the foundation from which we review properties for their historical significance. So I wanted just to recap a little bit of what staff has done to date on the historic context statement. We did solicit a request for proposals back in May of 2018. Through that process, we did enter into an agreement with Brunzell Historical to prepare an update to the context statement. We did a considerable amount of work, pretty much expended almost our entire budget, but didn't quite get the document over the finish line. We had a couple subcommittee meetings, also came before the board a couple times with a working draft. But when COVID hit, this really came to a screeching halt. So staff would like to apply for this grant in order to complete this project of updating our historic context statement. The grant deadline is May 14th, so we do have a little bit of time. One of the requirements, obviously, is submitting our annual report, which you just saw. So we will make sure that we get that up to the state by the end of this month. The one thing we haven't determined at this point is what the scope of the project might be and what the budget amount, like how much do we want to ask for as part of this grant. And so one of the questions that we're sort of putting before the board today is, you know, should we go after this grant and focus only on completing the work that's been started, which is the post-1965 era? Or should we kind of take this opportunity to do a comprehensive update to the entire document? And I believe that is my last slide. So happy to answer any questions, looking forward to getting some feedback from the board.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank staff for putting this together, and Marnie especially. This is great. I mean, I think this is basically what we've been looking for, and to get a grant to actually finish this in you know, give us some time and the money to do it right is fantastic. Do we know, do you actually put any specific requests for funds, or is that, I'm trying to look, do we ask for a specific amount?
We do. So we actually have to prepare a draft budget. There is a 20% local match. So whatever we determine our budget is, 20% of that will be provided by the city, and the remaining would be covered by the grant.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, the reason we don't have the budget for the board today is because this sort of question that Marnie's asking is, you know, where does the board desire us to focus? That will drive sort of what the budget looks like. So we're seeking this direction so we can really inform that budget narrative.
Mr. Chair, may I speak to this?
Sure.
I'm thinking, I was very involved most of my life in writing grant applications and getting millions of dollars in grants. And I was always of the belief that you should ask for as much as possible. And I guess if I were reviewing this as a grant critique, which I also did, I would ask, well, we gave you money before and you didn't finish the project, and now you want more money to finish the project. What more are you going to do for us? So I would think a comprehensive update might be more attractive to them than just what we had promised to do in the past and didn't get done. And I would, you know, I think that the budget should reflect the work involved in doing that comprehensive update. So those are my comments.
I have a slightly different version of that.
Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
We are seeing issues with the mid-century modern structures almost every meeting. And here today we had one from 1972. I would like to see us focus on the post-1965 period, mainly because that is completely missing from the context statement, and we have to kind of wing it when we bring up a building like a 1972 structure. So yes, a comprehensive update might be the best and would probably cost the most, but I'd like to see us emphasize a period that we have no information on to back up our arguments. If we had gone beyond 1965, we would have had an even stronger case when it came to the savings and loan building. So I hear what Carol is saying, but I also think we need to finish and emphasize the part that we're missing. It's like a missing front tooth, Eric.
So having been on that subcommittee to review the context statement, there was issues about integration of whatever update it is. I mean, it's sort of nice to be able to have an integrated document. So maybe not going back and doing a complete rewrite of what was gone before, but have some money in the grant to help integrate just in terms of formatting alone, perhaps integrating the post-1965 part of the context statement. Does that make sense, Marnie? Because I know we were kind of having that issue when we were reviewing it all.
Absolutely, it makes perfect sense.
So I think emphasizing the grant needs to focus on the post-65 era, but an update to coordinate and integrate everything into one document would be part of it. That would be my recommendation, because I think we do have the actual information in the pre-1965 document is good. It's just almost like just formatting it into one document so it doesn't seem like just something tacked on.
Well, in 2008, I believe Marnie had a slide up there when our architectural, what's the group, Marnie, that did the architectural resources? Were they Archives and Architecture? And then in 2008, ARG in 2008, I thought they integrated whatever they integrated so well that I couldn't see sort of the holes in it. So that was a good example of how they did it. Now, I hope the Brunzell group can follow that lead and give us a document if they're the ones. Do we have to do an RFP again?
That's a good question.
We do. The work that we've done to date was actually not funded by a grant. That was actually, money from the city's general fund. So
yes.
We in order to get these funds, we do need to send out another request for proposals as part of this program.
Okay, thank you. Does that give Marnie enough information, Eric?
I guess it's a question for Marnie. Does that give you, do we actually need a motion, or is that enough direction to go from?
So it sounds like there's consensus around focusing on the post-1965 era with an emphasis on making sure that that information is well integrated into the existing document.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
And I think, certainly today's meeting was a good example of it, of how, if you're not aware of the significant periods in the history going up close to present day, then you could lose a lot of important buildings before then, right? There's significant buildings that are not 50 years old that the exceptional ones should be identified, in my opinion. And that's what I think this will help with.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see, I'm sorry, I'm going to my agenda packet. So the next on the agenda is Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing major to report. I just want to let you know we will be switching over to the Zoom platform for our next regular meeting of both the Planning Commission and the Historic Resources Board. So you'll see that coming through. One of the benefits of that is that it's the same meeting agenda link and phone number every time, so you're not getting a different number every time. And more people are familiar with the Zoom platform in general than the Google platform. So we'll be switching to that for the May meeting when we come back to you. Other than that, I don't have any updates for you unless the board has specific questions about department operations. Oh, I will tell you, sorry. We are working with our HR department and a safety consultant to try and get the community planning and building offices open back to the public as soon as possible. Right now, we're shooting for mid-May. It will be on an appointment-only basis for the beginning. But we have supplies that are being ordered. Some are already here, plexiglass, air filters, additional signage, things like that, because we, just like the public, are very excited to see people again. So we're hopeful that by mid-May, we're going to be welcoming people back in, at least on an appointment basis.
Great.
So do you think, Brandon, that I know there's word that by June 15th, everything will supposedly be lifted if we behave. Do you anticipate that by June 15th, then we'd actually have people able to come to meetings and participate in meetings in person?
You know, we're going to have to take, we've talked about that a little bit. I don't want to speculate. I think that a lot of that, the June dates have more relation to the governor's economic roadmap, blueprint for economic safety. So that's more about restaurants and things like that. We're certainly tracking along with that and, moving to the orange tier and everybody getting vaccinated is part of the reason we're looking at opening to the public at the minimum level we are. So as we continue down that road, we certainly will explore that, how we can do it safely. The challenge becomes with a public meeting when people still don't feel safe or there still are concerns about social distancing. How do you have a meeting in the chambers when you can only have so many people? So you have to have a hybrid meeting, both Zoom and in the chambers, if you still have to maintain social distancing because you can't fit as many people in the chambers at that point. So we are looking at that. Again, we are truly excited to welcome people back into City Hall. We need to do it safely. Let me let Eric back in. He must have, Eric fell out the back door there. Eric, I don't know if you heard or not, but the question was, are we going to be having public meetings? And the shorter answer is, I don't really know yet. We're not exactly tied to the governor's blueprint, and we need to consider social distancing still. And if that forces us to have a hybrid meeting with both a Zoom availability and in person. So we're thinking about it. We're excited about it for when it happens in the future, but I can't guarantee it's going to be in June if that's what happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question for Brandon. To whom should we send our comments on the last item on the agenda?
Why don't you go ahead and send them to both Evan and myself? That would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And then Chair Dyer, I believe you're muted.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. I was just asking, is there a comfortable time frame or deadline you'd like to get those comments by?
Well, we've got a month, so if we could get them within a week, that would help us make sure that we get turned around in a fashion that looks really good for you.
Okay.
Good.
And I think.
Oops.
What happened to Eric?
Eric froze.
Eric froze.
Uh-oh. Well.
I'm gonna boot him out of the meeting, and he can join back up here. Maybe we'll give him just a moment. It's just staff remaining on the call, so.
Okay.
He would probably ask us for board announcements, but I don't have any. I don't know if you do, Carol.
No, I don't have any board announcements.
So maybe Eric will, but I don't have any. Have we lost him?
Do we have a vice chair?
He is the vice. That's
Oh,
it.
do we have a vice chair though? That's the question.
No, we don't. No. We need one.
I nominate Catherine.
Designated survivor of the Historic Resources Board.
Yeah, right. Well, should we wait for him?
We can give him another minute, and then one of you could assume the role of chair and adjourn the meeting.
Okay, but we have no subcommittee reports or board member announcements. And our future agenda items we have listed on our next regular meeting, May 17th. Do you have anything, Carol? Nothing?
No.
Well, let's just adjourn the meeting in honor of Eric and say goodnight to everyone. I'm glad to see you. At least we're meeting, if not in person.
That's right.
Good. Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.